Alright, so we're going to continue solving triangles. The beginning of this chapter is going to focus on the law of sines. The next section is going to focus on law of cosines. Now, these are two ways that we can solve non-right triangles, right? So this section is just going to be on law of sines. Alright, so anytime that you have any of these scenarios, so let's say you have two angles and a side, or you have a side, and an angle, meaning you have something that matches, right? If you recall from class, I typically say if you have something that matches, then you can use law of sines. So meaning, let's say in a problem, you're given angle A and you're given side A, you're able to use law of sines, right? Same thing with B and B. If I'm given a side B and an angle B, I can use law of sines. Just because if you look at this formula, then you notice that in each of our ratios or our fractions, we have the same side as we do the angle, right? So I have a side A over the sine of the angle A, and so on and so on, right? So in these cases where you have an angle that matches its side, then you can use law of sines, right? So it's going to be any of these three cases: angle, 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 side, or a side angle. You can also similarly write it a different way. Now, this is how I show you guys in class. I would do sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. You can do either way that you want, right? But what you're going to use depends on what information you're given. Now, I would use this one right here if you're missing an angle. And then I would use this version right here if you're missing a side. Right? Just because you have a side on top, you have an angle on top, there's less algebraic manipulation that you need to do to get what you're looking for by itself. Now, what you could do also, let's say I just have this part of it and I want to try to find, let's say, sine of B. What you could do is you could cross multiply, right? If you guys remember from Algebra 1, solve it the way that you would solve any proportion. Set them equal to each other, and then get your sine of B by itself, right? And I'll show you what that means in the first example. All right, so this information that we're given, I like to list it out. I also like to draw a picture. So I like to draw a little triangle. All right, so a triangle, something like that. And you can label your sides A, B, and C. Right, if you're just making up a triangle, it doesn't matter how you label them. Just keep in mind that the sides correspond to the opposite angle. Right, so this side right here is going to be side A. This side right here is side C, and then this side right here is side B. All right, so just keep that in mind when you're either given a triangle or need to label one. That's how you would label your information. Now, B is going to be 28. So I have B is 28. I have C, angle C is 102 degrees. And then I have angle B is 29 degrees. All right, so this is a case where we have a pair. We have something that matches, right? I have an angle B and I have a side B. So I can, from here, easily find a missing side, more specifically side C, by using law of sines. All right, so if I use the version of law of sines where I have a side on top, then I can do B over sine B equals C over sine C. All right, and you don't have to worry about A right now because we're not looking for that right now. But what you can do with this information is you can plug in everything that you have. All right, so you get 28 over sine of 29 equals C over sine of 102. All right, and then what you can do to get your C by itself, all you have to do is multiply by sine of 102 on both sides. All right, and then it cancels out over here. So then this, when you type this in your calculator, is going to get you your answer for the side C. All right, make sure you're plugging in this value into your calculator correctly. All right, keep in mind that that sine of 102 is going to be on top with the 28. So make sure you're doing sine of 102 times 28 and then divide your answer by 29. So we should get our side C after doing this is to the nearest hundredth, 56.49. All right, centimeters. I'm sorry, feet. All right, so we found a missing side. I didn't do this to begin with, which you could have done this to begin with, but you could find your angle A first. All right, keep in mind any triangle has interior side measurements of 180. So what you could do to find A is just subtract your values from 180, right? So I'm going to do 180 minus 102 minus 29. All right, so this should get you, I think, 39 or 49. All right, so that gets us our missing angle. And now let's look at what we have. I have an angle that I just found. I found a side. We want to find one more side, right? And that's going to be side A. Right? I don't know what side A is going to be, but we can use law of sines. Keep in mind, we can use the same pair that we had originally. We can use B and B. So I can do A over sine A is B over sine B. All right, so I can do A over sine of 49, which we just found, equals B over sine B, so 28 over sine of 29. All right, and then to get your A by itself, I would multiply sine, you can't really see that, sine of 49 on both sides. Cancel out sine of 49, and then this, when you plug this in your calculator, is going to get you your answer for A. All right, so once again, be careful with your calculator. Make sure that 28 times sine of 49 is on top, and then divide your answer by sine of 29. All right, so we should get to the nearest hundredth, 43.59. All right, feet. All right, and that solves the triangle. So again, you could draw the triangle. If maybe drawing it out gets a little messy for you, maybe you don't like it, you could also just list them out, right? So I can just say A is 43, B is 98, right? We don't know what C is. I have side A, don't know what that is. Side B, also don't know what that is. And then side C, we're given that that's 22. All right, so keep in mind, just by looking at this, I don't have any pairs. I don't have an angle that matches its corresponding side. But what you can do is you can add A and B and then subtract from 180 to get my angle C. So I can do 180 minus 43 minus 98, which is going to get you 39. All right, so I have all three angles now. And now notice we have a pair. I have a side C and an angle C. All right, so I can use law of sines to try to figure out A and B. All right, let's start with A. To find A, I would do A over sine A equals C over sine C. Doesn't matter which two you use. All right, I know that the formula that we give you has all three of them set equal to each other. You don't have to work with all three of them at the same time. All right, you can just do it one at a time. All right, so I get, when plugging in the information that we have, I get A over sine of 43 equals c over sine c, which is 22 over sine of 39. All right, and then to get a by itself, I would multiply both sides by sine of 43. Sine of 43 cancels out. And then when you plug that in your calculator, you get your answer. All right, so we should get 22 times sine of 43 divided by sine of 39, which should get you to the nearest hundredth, 23.84. All right, and then we want to do the exact same thing to find our side b, right? So I can do b over sine b equals c over sine c. All right, so I get b over sine b, so over sine 98, equals c over sine c, so 22 over sine of 39. And then I can multiply both sides by sine of 98. All right, these sine 98s are going to cancel. And then this right here is going to get you your answer for B. All right, so if you do 22 times sine of 98 and divide your answer by sine of 39, you should get to the nearest hundredth, 34.62. All right, that's all you got to do for that problem. Now, in your guys' notes, you have more slides after the one that we just finished. But for the sake of this class, we're going to avoid any case where you get either multiple triangles, no triangle, maybe a right triangle, right? We're avoiding those cases with you guys. So you guys just need to concern yourselves with being able to solve it the way that we just did. All right. But what you will see is maybe we ask you to find the area of an oblique triangle, right? So meaning a non-right triangle where we don't have the height measurement, or maybe we don't even have a base measurement, right? So when you have something like a side angle side, meaning you have two sides and an included angle, right? If you remember from geometry, included angle is the one that is between the two angles. So that means, let's say this is B and C and this is A, right? This A is included in the sides B and C, right? And A is right here, right? So anytime you have this case of a side angle side, two sides and an included angle, you can use any of these three formulas depending on the information that you have to find the area of your triangle. All right, so this one, for example, I have a B, an A, and an angle C. If I have a B, A, and an angle C, I can use the version of my area formula that says my area is going to be 1/2 AB sine C. All right, so this is going to be 1/2 times 52 times 90 times sine of 102. All right, plug this into your calculator. It should get you 2,288.87. All right, square meters. All right, to the nearest hundred. All right, we can do the exact same thing in the next problem. All right, I want to find my area given a side A, a side B, and an angle C. I would use the same variant of that formula. So my area is going to be 1/2 times 24 times 18 times sine of 80. All right, now once again, you plug this in your calculator. All right, and that should get you, your area is 212.72. All right. And that's it for this lesson, right? So we're not going to do special cases of law of sines where you get some information that might not make complete sense, right? So you're just going to see the normal versions of law of sine. And you'll have to know how to find the area of the formula. Right now on a test or a quiz, we'd give you all of the formulas. So in this lesson, there's really not a lot to memorize.